I know there's an executive session tonight. I know.
Okay, at the end, right?
Yeah.
So we cut the stream
And
and.
the stream is up to go back on. I mean, we'll try and ask to see if they really care about the adjournment. If they don't care about the adjournment, then, you know.
I can just leave you by the
So, yeah.
How long probably gonna be taking the meeting tonight?
It may be a little while.
Okay.
It may take a little while. Yeah, I don't know how long the executive sessions are taking. That's one I'm afraid is going to be longer. So let me see if I can ask if it makes a difference. That part's recorded.
Okay.
The adjournment, if they feel like they need it.
So it's all set.
Yeah. And so, we'll see if
How are
we
you?
Oh, hey Mike, how you doing? Set it live.
Well, there's a lot of steps to set up the live reception with YouTube.
Yeah. It's just live stream right now. It should be working.
What's supposed to show, the
It
picture?
should just be showing right now back here. So, hang on, let me go.
At these meetings, it depends on time, right?
Oh, Chief. Hey, how's it going? Oh, it is on now.
Hi, Chief.
The mics are on, just so you know, so we don't,
Okay.
we don't mute it.
How you been?
Good. How you doing?
You're smiling.
Life is good. Life is good. Holidays are coming.
Yeah. That's great.
Okay.
Because that's
Even better. So, yeah. So thank you. Thank you, Shirley. I guess, sure. Yeah. That makes sense.
Call this meeting of the Board of Education to order. First item of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next item is public comments. You have the sheet.
There are no public comments. Please proceed.
Comments, okay. I would like to know for the record that as requested by some board members, we have provided a whole pile of copies of the documents for tonight, which obviously are not going fast, but we've done that as an experiment. Burning down the forest, as it were. I would also like to note for the record that any members of the public who would like to get electronic copies of our records, we have an email list that goes out every Friday before board meetings that has the board packet in it, and any member of the public who would like to receive the board packets in the advance of a meeting just has to let us know. You can let Dr. Adamowski or any of the board members know. We'll have Maura, our administrative assistant, add you to the list, and you would get the entire packet electronically on the Friday before each meeting. So I just wanted to note that that is available for any members of the public who would like to use it. We have several reports from the superintendent. We also have the chief of police here tonight with a presentation, so he doesn't have to sit here through all of our business. Without objection from the board, I think we could move that up and allow them to do their presentation now. Okay? Chief, you have the floor.
Thank you. Appreciate you entertaining us tonight for a few minutes, and I want to thank Mr. Kasimis for helping us put this together and being supportive of this. I think it's an important thing. Let me just preface my comments first. As you know, we spend a lot of time and we work very hard to try to look for programs to better the relationship with the police and the community, all segments of the community, and to create better outreach. And while I'm proud of what we've been doing and the programs that we have in place, when we see a new program that we think will have a big impact on the community and the department, we want to reach out and try to add that to our arsenal, so to speak. And recently, the U.S. Attorney's Office brought a program to Connecticut, or brought to light a program that's available to Connecticut called Choose to Live. And it's a program that's geared for high school students primarily, and those students that are around the driving age, 16 or so. And what it does, in a nutshell, is try to teach the students how to interact with the police, and also a component that will teach the officers what they're teaching the students. So we're both on the same page and we both understand when interactions happen, what each of us can expect, and hopefully make the interactions more positive. And it's been very successful from what we've learned in speaking to the presenter, who I think makes the program what it is. He's a former FBI agent, a former U.S. attorney. He was an attorney with the NFL, with the NBA. He has an amazing track record, and he started this foundation doing these programs because he believes in what he's teaching the kids. Recently, Deputy Chief Gonzalez went to New Haven to the U.S. Attorney's Office, met with Mr. Williams, Attorney Williams, and got some more information on the program, brought it back to me. We met with Mr. Kasimis to discuss it with him, and here we are. So let me just let Ashley talk just briefly about what he learned in New Haven, and then we have a brief video to show you as well.
I think one of the key components of this program is that you're going to see Mr. Williams, who had a childhood that, he had a lot of challenges, and he was able to overcome that and become an FBI agent, and he's going to share that with the kids. He's going to share his experiences that he had growing up and getting stopped, and let's face it, no one likes to get pulled over or get stopped. It's intimidating, and you don't know sometimes how to handle it, and that's why gets people in trouble sometimes, and situations escalate. And he is just going to talk about his experience. He's very engaging, and we're just thrilled to have him. I know that I heard him speak, and I was instantly, I signed up on board. And I'm very fortunate that I have a chief that's progressive. As he's mentioned, he is always looking for different programs and different events or components to do community outreach, and that's what, we're in good shape. We have a good relationship. We're extremely committed, and it's evident that, he has 8 officers dedicated to the schools full-time as SROs. We have a great DARE program, cadets program. We recently were able to have the Justice and Law Academy at Pathways, and this is just another thing that we can share with the kids, and an interesting component of it is he's going to be teaching law enforcement as well on how to interact with kids, what to expect from them, and how to de-escalate situations. So I think we're all going to benefit from it. So I'm looking forward to it, and I thank you for the support.
Okay, thank you.
And while we'll be glad to accept any money you want to give us towards the program, we're not here to ask for money tonight, Tom, so.
We have fun.
I know he was getting nervous.
Wrong finance director, you gotta talk to the other one now.
We're in the middle of an epidemic. It's an epidemic because we have, in the communities that are in most need, there's a distrust for certain levels of authority. That's creating a panic within the community. It's also creating a panic within those levels of authority. And everybody from the community, from the police officers, government, are scrounging in opposite directions for remedies. I see a police officer across the street, and I wave to the police officer, because every time I see a police officer, I wave, I say hello, I thank them for their service, I say thank you for your service. The police officer waved back. He said, "Oh, come on over here." I said, "Sure." So I walked over to the police officer, and I just started to have a conversation with him. And 6 seconds into it, he said to me, "I want you to do something for me. I want you to turn around, put your hands behind your back. You're under arrest."
This is my second opportunity, my privilege of being able to sit down and listen in audience to Q Williams' message.
Hearing it from him was incredible. To hear it's different than actually just reading about it.
I think this message is extremely powerful. I think it resonated with our students.
He cuffed me quickly, put me up against a cruiser. I said to him, "Officer, I really don't know what this is about, but I want you to know something. I'm an FBI agent. I have a gun on me. Lieutenant, can somebody please tell me what's going on?" And he said, "Yeah, just give me a few minutes." And in those few minutes, I had a lot of time to think about my life. I sat there. In that car, handcuffed. And I thought about my life. I wrote a book called How Not to Get Killed by the Police, and it's not a police bashing book. It's a book that brings the police and the community together. It's a book that builds on communities, because it gives tools to community members about how to interact with the police in successful ways. It also teaches the police how to better interact with the communities they serve. It's serving in the 21st century, not policing in the 21st century. I wrote this book for my son. After my son was born, about 2 years later, the tensions became very thick between law enforcement and communities. My wife came to me and said, "You need to release that book to the public because perhaps you'll save a life." Getting people home safely is the reason why we released this book.
just want you to know what I didn't know when I was your age. Nobody told me what to do when I was stopped by the police. So I'm telling you what to do when stopped by the police. We're trying to bridge the gap between the city police officers and the community. It is much needed. This was the premier opportunity with somebody who has incredible credibility. These are survival skills. I myself has had interactions with law enforcement, and I wish I had this counsel as a young man growing up in New York City in the Bronx. This is about relationships. It's not about how not to get killed by the police. It's about how do you form relationships in life that keep you alive and allow you to thrive. Relationships will drive your destiny. They drove mine. I thank you for having me here today. God bless you. Thank you.
Thanks. So we're looking to present this, or have him present this to the 11th graders at both high school, well, all three high schools in 2 assemblies, and hopefully Mr. Kasimis will help us arrange that. We will be obtaining funds. We have some ideas on where we can get the funds to bring him here for the booklets, which will go to every student, and we just wanted to, I guess, bring it forward to you to let you know what we're trying to do. I think it's going to be an amazing program, and just be another outreach tool. I think, given what's going on the last couple of years in society, I think this is, I'm not going to say long overdue, but it's going to put the kids in a position where we're going to have a captive audience. We've had these kind of presentations, but when it's voluntary, it's a little more difficult to get the crowds. But having an assembly where the kids are all there and a captive audience to listen, I think we'll have a lot more power and a lot more success in getting the message out. So I don't know if anyone has any questions or...
Any questions?
Yeah,
Yeah.
do you have any of the booklets?
I have an extra one if you want.
I can leave mine here too if you want to.
Yeah, if you would, thanks.
Down. Give Tim.
Do we have a time frame that we're thinking of maybe this will be happening? We might.
Yeah.
We've, Dr. Connor had requested that we schedule it for January 25th and 26th.
Okay.
So at each high school.
Great.
And like Chief said, it's going to be for the 11th and 12th graders too?
11th
Or
grade,
just
did you
11th
say, just
graders?
11th?
I think 11 and 12 we're looking at.
Both?
As many as we can get there,
We're looking
basically.
for driving age kids.
Right, absolutely.
Specifically,
yes.
and, you know, some board even 10th graders. But, and we're going to give a book, we want to give a book to every single kid, and that's where the cost is. It's not bringing them here, the cost is $10 a book. So we figured about $15,000 for the program. So
This is great.
that was like,
Um,
yeah, and so, I just want to add one thing. I had asked my daughter, my 18-year-old daughter who's driving, I asked her, what would you do if you got pulled over by the police?
Right.
And she said, I don't know, I'd probably freak out. And it's one thing that we don't teach our kids, and it doesn't even get taught in driver's ed. And
true.
And it's
Very
it's
true.
not. And so that's one of the things I know they're going to work with the SROs, right, to train them as well, to interact with the kids, to teach them that. And we don't want to put our kids in a bad position, that will put the police officer in a bad position. And it's simply education. It's just teaching them what to do. And so that's why I think it really fits. And I applaud the chief and deputy chief for really being behind this.
Can I add one other comment? Artie brought out a good point. Many of us that have children that are starting to drive, and we're teaching them to drive, and they've gone through driving lessons. When you see a police officer, what do you do? When you see the lights going on, I mean, they have those kind of questions, and they're just unsure what to do. As parents, we can tell them, but I think it's helpful coming from a police officer, when you see that, not to get intimidated, not to get scared, but to know what to do, I think is important.
And towards that point, it's unfortunate, the Connecticut Chiefs have a program. It's not exactly this, but it's called Breaking Barriers, to try to teach kids on how to interact when they're in a car stop. And we've tried to get that as part of Department of Motor Vehicles driver's ed, and haven't gotten very far at getting that, into the program statewide. So if we can do it ourselves locally, I think, it's going to be a step up for us.
Which is great, even an ambulance coming, a fire truck, I mean, sometimes people freeze, and adults will, but just having those kind of tools so you know what to do, especially for young kids, 16, 17, is important.
You're right. It's not something,
Yeah.
I mean, I had my first conversation with my daughter Christina about getting stopped after she got stopped.
Yeah. And the book, I know it's kind of, when Deputy Chief Ashley told me about the book. It's How Not to Get Shot by the Police. It shakes you a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, so we did our homework. He met with a couple of South Norwalk community people, and I met with South Norwalk pastors just to make sure that it would be well accepted, and everybody was 100% on board. Dr. Kreviker met with us as well, and also Dr. Connor, and so they were 100% with it as well.
Good. All right, let's see what we can do to make it happen.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you.
Chief.
Thank you.
All right, so we will now move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Adamowski.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lyons. I've got three important items to discuss with you tonight, so I appreciate your bearing with me. The first is a discussion of our 2017-18 budget goals, and I'm going to pass these on both sides, and there are some that will be available for the public once I review this with the board. So, you know, it's important for us to conceptualize our annual budget, not in and of itself, but rather as a tool to implement the goals of our strategic operating plan. So that means that we need to have budget goals every time we put a budget together. Otherwise, we're simply funding the status quo, and we're not making the necessary changes and improvements that we need to make. So I'd like to review with you some of the budget goals for 2017-18 that I'm recommending. And the reason these are budget goals, and as opposed to something else, is that these are all related to strategies in the strategic operating plan that we need to achieve. Now, with the exception of number one, we have an annual expense in terms of salaries and costs of health insurance based upon our collective bargaining agreements. And we're highly unionized with 8 unions, so virtually everyone, with the exception of me and my 7 direct reports, are involved in one of those bargaining groups. Those are all long-term contracts, so for the most part, these are contracts that are already in place that call for certain increases in the next school year. As we go on, I think you will see that the wild card in this budget is actually our health insurance benefit costs, which have gone up significantly. And we believe there are 2 reasons for that. One is the level of claims, but the other is that these expenses are simply becoming more expensive. And after a hiatus of a couple of years of flattening off, now they are spiking up again. And so this is going to have some significant implications for us this year. These are going to be explored in detail by the Finance Committee, Mr. Meek's committee, but I should alert you now that the health insurance costs will represent a major challenge for us. And unfortunately, based upon the advice of the city finance director last year, we were not left with a sufficient reserve in order to be able to deal with this at the time the Special Ed Development Fund was proposed and approved. The second goal deals with support for our intra-district magnet schools. And as you know, we have had these schools programs in name only in many respects. They want to do better. They want to have a program that is effective, that operates with fidelity according to the model, and we have to support our schools in doing that. So you'll see the 6 listed there that we would attempt to fund at the $1,000 per student level. And remember, this is a beginning, because the state allocation for program costs, the state grant for the state magnets is $3,000 per student. Right? So our schools are not going to be able to achieve that level of robust program, but they can make a start, and they can do something, and they can at least offer a modicum of what their theme or program was designed to accomplish. As you know, this year we are, for the first time, all dual language at Silvermine in kindergarten, and those students will advance to 1st grade with another cohort coming in kindergarten. So the recommendation is for K1. Science magnet is Jefferson. Jefferson at 600 and some odd students would break the bank. So I can't recommend every student at Jefferson receive this, but in consultation with the principal, we feel that the most important area in terms of providing additional science program would be grades 4 and 5. Bank Street at Columbus is a relatively small school. They will be a K-6 school next year. And this is a paired grading system when implemented fully. And so we're recommending the supplement for that. NECA at 912 will be about 300 students next year. The Medical Academy began this year at Brian Mcmahon Medical Sciences, and those students will move to 10 with another cohort coming in at 9. And then we have the IB program, which I know Mr. Kasimis is going to report on a little later tonight. But it looks like we are going to get approval from International Baccalaureate World. And as a result of that, our 11th graders will be able to take courses in the diploma program next year. The diploma program is 11th and 12th grade. And so this is going to be a big, wonderful step forward for our school district and for Brian McMahon High School to be able to offer it in an IB program. So those needs encompass number 2. You're aware through number 3 that we have been dealing with an unusual anomaly in funding in our school system, where our middle schools have been funded at a higher level than our high schools. And this has taken its toll on the high schools in the form of multiple study halls, not having enough teachers to offer enough classes to fill the school day, and also it restricts us in terms of our graduation requirements, whereas most good school districts in the state are at 25, we are still at 20, and we simply need to offer more courses. I think I have also indicated to you that this is the key to improving our universal SAT scores, which all of our students now take, and which is the basic measure of quality in the high school. The SAT is raised by depth and breadth of program. The more courses you take, the more higher level courses you take, the more rigorous and broad your program is, the better you do on the SAT. That is unlike a standards-based situation in grades K through 8, where you can teach to a specific standard. So that is an important goal. What I'm recommending this year is that we hold the middle schools flat at their current level of funding as we implement phase 2 of middle school redesign and bring the high schools up to the level of the middle school. Now, this is not going to be adequate for the long term, but it's a step forward. In subsequent years, we need to raise the high school expenditure above that of the middle school expenditure in order to have equity in the kind of high school program that we want for all students. Now, 4 or 5 are linked together. You're aware that we have had issues regarding our state priority school district grant, and that is our largest state grant at some $4 million. We have had K-3 teacher salaries in there. Last year, we removed half of them, you'll recall, right? More troubling, we've had the salaries of security guards in that grant, and they've been represented as climate specialists or PPBIS specialists. So we've had a conversation with the state about this in terms of full disclosure, and they are expecting us to remove these from the priority school district grant this year in order for us to get our grant approved. Also, it is unrealistic to think that any school district can provide security to its students without spending any money on it locally. And so we'll be removing the security guards. I think the budget situation will be such that we will not be able to remove the remaining K-3 teacher salaries. So something that I had hoped to accomplish in 1 year last year that became a 2-year plan will have to become a 3-year plan. But the security guards will have to come out. When the security guards come out, we will have funds available from the Priority School District Grant to address one of the priorities of that funding stream, and that's to expand summer learning opportunities. And I'll be proposing to you later in the year workshop session that we expand our very successful K-3 school-based summer school program that we had for the first time last year to grades 4 and 5 for those students that are significantly below the grade level threshold. And keep in mind that this is the only Tier 3 intervention that we are able to offer. Tier 3, by definition, is more time and in a specialized learning environment. When we have the workshop, Dr. Connor is going to share with you the results of last summer. And they're spectacular. I think we know how to do this. And I think one of the reasons why our English language arts scores are going up is because of this. But this is important for our 4th and 5th graders, particularly for those 5th graders making the transition into middle school, where our performance has been the weakest. Now, we would also like to address the issue of summer credit recovery for graduation. Our current situation involves a small online or blended learning summer school program at each high school that enables students to finish a course if they're one course or less than one course short during the summer and graduate. However, they have to pay for it. They are charged for it. And these are the same kids who have the least amount of resources in order to do something like this. And so what I'm proposing here is that we utilize the investment in resources that we have made at Briggs Pathways High School, where we have 4 fully functioning and effective blended learning classrooms using the Ingenuity system, which is state-of-the-art, and that we hold the high school there, that we allow students to take 2 classes during the summer if they are 2 credits away from graduation, and be able to graduate in the summer graduation. This will have an impact on our graduation rate. Many students who are a year or 1 or 2 classes away, they just disappear the next year. They don't come back for it, right? So this is an important thing for us to do, and we can't continue to charge students and their families for this. We have to just provide it, and provide it at district expense. And again, we can use our Priority School District Grant for its intended purpose, one of its intended purposes, by doing that. Number 6 is an idea that you may find different, unusual, but I would ask you to seriously consider this. We are being squeezed in terms of resources by the growth of our student body. That is certainly the case this year, where we absorbed 90 new students without funding for their teachers, their aides. Many of those students were special ed students. Many of them were unaccompanied minors that incur a very large cost in terms of our ELL program. And we need to introduce, I think, to the city the concept that when enrollment is growing, there should be a supplemental appropriation for growth based upon our per pupil expenditure. Now, if the day comes when our enrollment is going down, we should be prepared to do the opposite. We should be prepared to reduce our budget on a per student basis after the rest of the budget is accounted for. But in this case, in addition to our fundamental budget request, I would like the city to consider a supplemental appropriation for growth. And I think the way this has to work is that as our city's grand list goes up because of all the growth, as the construction fees are collected and inspection fees are collected because of all the growth, all of this money has been going directly into the city's surplus fund. And as you know, it's the highest in the state, the AAA bond rating. But I think you have to look at this from the standpoint of collecting those several millions of dollars per year, netting out the cost of growth to the school district, and then putting the remainder in your surplus fund. At least that would be the concept I'd like to advance here. Finally, we have, as a goal, we need to secure capital budget funding for phase 1 of the school building program. You will be receiving on December 20th recommendations from the Facilities Committee for phase 1 construction of schools. This is a capital budget item separate from our operating budget, but it is of great importance to us, and it is, of course, long-term. If we are successful in this year, next year will be the design year, 2 years of construction. Afterwards, it will be a full 3-year process before we're able to realize any improvement or any relief in terms of enrollment from the building program. So it's important that this be initiated this year. On the second page of your handout, there is a horizontal chart that attempts to translate some of this into very general terms. We're not prepared tonight to say the budget is going to be recommended at a certain level, but we can identify the cost of these various goals. And you'll see under Goal 1, the salary increase is equal to a 1.7% increase in the budget. The benefit, or the health insurance, is at 4.7. Now that's almost a 30% increase in and of itself in the health insurance account. That translates into 4.7% increase in the budget. That has to be looked at very carefully by the Finance Committee. Mr. Hamilton has done a great deal of research on this. I think it proves in retrospect that our assumptions were correct on this a year ago, but that nonetheless, we have to deal with this issue now and prevent it from having such a negative effect on our budget that it prevents other things from occurring. You'll see Goal 2, which is the intra-district magnet school program funding of $1,000 per student. You can see how this plays out in the various magnet programs, and the cost of that is 0.7 of 1% of the budget. The high school currently in Goal 3 is about $165 less per student excuse me, than the middle school. And you'll see on the basis of 3,511 students what that would involve, and that is 0.3% of increase in the budget. You'll see the security guards moved out of the PSD budget to the operating budget. That's 0.4%. And then that enables us in Goal 5 to provide greater summer learning opportunities to 4th, 5th, and 12th graders. The basis for the supplemental appropriation would be our per pupil expenditure of $16,802 as verified by the state times 151 students. We gained 91 students this year in 16-17 that were unbudgeted for whom we had no resources. And next year, our projections, which were part of our facility study, project an increase of another 60. Now, this is the net from some grades going down, others going up, and so on. So we have a need or a gap for funding for 151 new students. And I've mentioned Goal 7, which is to secure capital budget funding. Now, you can look at those percentages in the column. You can add them up. That'll give you a rough idea of where we are at this point. But this is the starting gate. And while we have, I think, completed most of our review, there's a lot to go ahead of us with the Finance Committee's review by the full board, review by the city, so on and so forth. But I'm presenting it to you this way around a set of goals so that we can avoid any budget drama, right? So that we don't have this issue of what are we going to cut from the budget if we have to cut it, and parents becoming upset and everything else. You can see, if you don't do certain things, you can see what the impact of that would be if you were not able to secure full funding relative to all or some of these goals. So it's a little bit of a primer introduction. We've got a meeting of the Finance Committee this month, another one early in January. You'll be dealing with the budget on January 10th in terms of a full budget workshop, and then again on the 17th to confirm what your request would be to the City Council. But this is, I guess this is the introduction to our process now.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, just so I understand this estimated percent budget increase over 16-17 and the 4.7 for benefits. That's 4.7 of the total budget?
Yes.
Is the increase from prior
The
year?
increase in the insurance cost would be about 30%, which translates into 4.7% when spread over the whole budget.
So roughly $4 million extra from last year.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
Okay, second,
All right. Next.
Second item that I'd like to introduce to you tonight is our school climate survey. You should have in front of you a copy of the district summary. It's entitled Norwalk Public Schools District Report, Comprehensive School Climate Inventory. And I'd like to review some things with you relative to this survey, which was given for the first time in our Norwalk Public Schools in May and June of 2016. Prior to that, we had not ever given a climate survey. And the reason we're giving one is because it is one of the measures in your strategic operating plan. And so let me just review this briefly. School climate refers to the quality of school life as it relates to norms and values, interpersonal relationships, social interactions, organizational processes and structure. It's important because it sets the tone for all the learning and teaching done in the school environment, and it's predictive of the student's ability to learn and develop in healthy ways. So, climate is important because those students who are in a good school climate, they tend to learn more. They are more because they are more engaged. Students that are in a bad climate, they become disengaged and their learning suffers. So the CSCI, which is the Comprehensive School Climate Inventory, which we gave last May and June, is a scientifically developed survey based on research and theory defining what contributes to positive school climates for learning. It measures perceptions of the school community regarding climate, students, school personnel, and parents, how they feel about their school environment. It was developed by the National School Climate Center, which is a nonprofit organization devoted to improving climate in schools. This happens to be the measure that is used most prevalently in the United States today to measure school climate, and it was recommended to us by several authorities in this area. We gave the survey to students, teachers, and staff for the first time in May, June of 2016. Again, because it is one of the measures in the SOP. But I would caution you that this is baseline data. So none of our schools that are working on some of these measures are working, or to improve them, are working on them for the first time ever. Because this information was not known previously. So if you look on page 3, you'll see that there are 13 dimensions of school climate that this survey measures. The first 11 are for students and parents, and they are grouped into 4 categories: safety, interpersonal relationships, the environment, and social media. The next two are for staff only, and that is the rating of leadership and professional relationships. You can peruse the various ratings of schools. I would call your attention to the student climate scores by school. That is the chart toward the back just before the overview that has all those different dots where you have all 20 schools charted, right? It's very hard to discern, but if you spend some time looking at it, you will be able to follow it. And you'll see certain things that will jump out here. So, for example, if you look at that blue triangle, which is the lowest rating for how students and parents perceive their physical surroundings, you'll note that those results are from Norwalk High School. If you look at Wolf Pit School, you'll see some of the highest climate scores overall in the district. If you look at sense of social and emotional security, you'll see that is a district-wide area for improvement for us. That's where most schools will take a dip on this chart. Just want to review with you finally some of the key findings of this. In the safety area, safety rules and norms were consistently rated very high across all populations at all school levels. So that's a strength of ours and something that we can lever. The social emotional security was an area of need across virtually all populations of the district. And this is the area of students acting to reduce bullying and harassment, right? This is what they mean by the upstanders as opposed to the bystanders. And then you'll see in each of these sections questions for further consideration as to how we would improve climate scores, or a particular school would improve its scores. In the teaching and learning area, throughout the district, parents have the highest scores at the elementary level. And this means they feel like their children are getting varied opportunities to demonstrate their skills, are supported for independent thinking, receive academic challenge, support, and individual attention. Those scores happen to be lower at the middle school and the high school levels. In the questions for further consideration, you'll see that social and civic learning may be a gap in our school district today. We really have no organized or systematic way of approaching it currently. And then finally, in the area of interpersonal relationships, those are social supports, adults and social supports. Students consistently rated this very high across all populations and school areas. This means they feel they're getting the support they need from the adults in the building. Respect for diversity is a positive across the district, and it could be an area of even greater strength for us. One of the questions is, why are some student subgroups and grades rating respect for diversity higher than others, even when it may be in the same school? So it's something, this raises questions for us to examine. In terms of institutional environments, parents are very positive about this, meaning that they identify positively with being members of the school district. And if there is an area for us to work on, it would be to create an even stronger sense of community among students and staff. Professional relationships are rated very positively in the district. As the summary here says, it's a foundational strength to leverage for improvement. And staff members, for the most part, reported very positive ratings of leadership at a majority of school buildings. So this will give you a little bit of an overview. I'm presenting this to you tonight for your awareness, not for any great analysis. I'm also going to give you an example of a school report. and I have tried to pick schools that might be, that you might be interested in. If we could pass this one down to Ms. Mosby, and this one to Ms. Harris, and Mr. Lyons, Dr. Crevecoeur, Reverend Kasimis, Ms. Keys, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Meek, and Mr. Barbas. This gives you an example of the climate survey in a school that you may be associated with if you're a district member, or may have simply get an example of if you're an at-large member. Now, we have these on every single school. And working with Dr. Costanzo, our schools this year are setting goals in the climate area. So among their SLOs, which last year were limited exclusively to academics, if there is an area of climate that needs improvement or something that needs to be strengthened, they would be setting a goal in that area as well and working on it. Okay, so, you know, now we know what we didn't know, and we have a new point of data that will be helpful to us in improving our schools. In subsequent years, we will be able to produce a comparative report which shows whether or not schools went up and down or down in particular areas. And like every other piece of data that we have used, this enables us to improve our schools, make them better environments. And again, the reason why that is important in this area is that schools that have good climate foster learning at a higher and more accelerated level.
Okay.
So, any questions on that? I know I've thrown a lot at you here.
Mike and then Eric.
What I think is fascinating looking at this data is the range. So student response is pretty good, although, you know, in a couple places like Norwalk High School, it was just crap, and Ponus Ridge, I mean, just shocking when you compare it to the other schools. But where there's even really crazy range is looking at staff response, where you've got Brian Mcmahon at 98%, and then you've got some other schools, you know, Rowton 12%, Rowayton School 20%, pretty shocking. And then parental response, you know, generally pretty low, but some schools there was 0 parental response. And then I guess, let's see, the highest was maybe Brookside at 13%. I'm just wondering what could be attributed. Was it just the way it was marketed, or?
No, I think that this was the first time around, so there were lots of lessons to be learned. And, you know, this is a voluntary survey. So, for example, our staff, you know, don't have to take it if they don't want. I think there may have been some concern about, you know, among teachers of their principal knowing how they would rate this, or could it be identified with them, that type of thing. I think those have been resolved for the future. This is a fully anonymous survey. I think among parents, it is a marketing issue in terms of how do you get this to parents, when do you give it, right? Do you give it when parents are actually in the school? Do you provide some incentive for returning it? You know, even though it's anonymous, if you return it, in a sealed envelope, you get some incentive. And then for students, I think our schools simply have to acclimate to giving it to students in a universal manner. You just fill it out in school, as opposed to having students, you know, voluntarily fill it out at some other time before or after school or wherever. But again, this was a learning experience. It was our very, very first time with it. We've learned a lot. I think the returns will come up significantly this next year, and we'll have a better point of comparison.
Thanks. Eric?
Actually, that was my question.
Okay. Any other questions? All right.
Finally, I have the very good news of announcing that Brian Mcmahon High School has received its 10-year accreditation from the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, Commission on Public Schools. You have a copy of the report. The report is a glowing one, and I think the thing that most impressed me in debriefing with the visiting team was that any recommendation that they would make had already been made by the school in its self-study. So, I think we see this as culminating or describing a school where the faculty and leadership have a very strong handle on where they are, where they should be going, and how they are improving. I think the IB situation is a very good example of this. I would call your attention to the letter that is in front of you. It summarizes the report. It's in several sections. You'll see on page 1 the things that the committee was most impressed with, and our commendations for the school. There is a set of other things that the committee was pleased to note. Now, this is fairly unusual in these reports, but these were things that the committee went to great lengths to comment on. There's another section requesting the special progress report, which is standard by October of 2017. This kind of describes what the school is doing next. And then there would be a section regarding the recommendations on the third page of this. And then the congratulations of to the administration and faculty, bless you, from the committee. So there is a report that's due next October. There's a report that's due in 2 years, but on the basis of the accreditation visit, Brian Mcmahon will be fully accredited for the next decade. And I want to thank and commend Suzanne Korshets and her staff and faculty of the school. This was a broad-based effort that involved virtually every professional in the school. Brian Mcmahon went through this with flying colors after 2 years, virtually 2 years of preparation, which enabled them to sharpen their practice to the point where this kind of report could be written and received. So congratulations to them.
So both of our high schools have their NEASC certification.
They do.
Good for another decade.
Good for another decade.
Good. All right. Thank you for those reports. We're now going to go into the work session, which consists of a review of the Special Education Policy and Procedures Manual with Ms. Toper, our head of Specialized Learning and Student Services. Over to you. I want to see this before I pass it.
Hi, everyone. Happy holidays.
Hi.
Good to see you. Just a quick plug. I thought you might enjoy hearing about our Parent Advisory Council. We had our first meeting. It was delightful. So the group got together. Toper baked her famous brownies, so we baked in some chocolate goodness. We talked about some things that were going on in the district. We made some strategic plans for the dyslexia clinic that we're hoping to have a regional dyslexia clinic and perhaps the year after next. And they were very, very helpful in kind of strategizing that for us. So I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you for allowing me the time to pick the names during our board meeting. So I know this is really exciting, the Policy and Procedure Manual. So it's been a long time coming. Dr. Kaur, please jump in at any point. We had his committee review it, and I will show you. They found a lot of things that they wanted to bring to our attention, so they did their job and their due diligence. But I'll tell you a little bit about kind of the history of how we got here, and then we'll talk about the manual itself. Prior to my starting, there was a group of about 60 individuals that got together. It was administrators, teachers, paras, ELL teachers, parents, speech-language pathologists, school psychologists, so a pretty good cross-section of almost anybody that would be participating and using this manual. And they all started with a skeleton and brainstormed and read and went through each of the sections to really find out what they thought was particular to Norwalk, things that were statutory and regulatory that we had to obviously keep, and to make sure that we had current language. That was then brought to a smaller group, a supervisory group of about 20 some odd folks, who then really looked at it, wordsmithed it, made sure that we defined everything, made sure that it was clear, made sure that we had resources to support whenever we were talking about a certain regulation or a form. The committee then gave those changes to Attorney Terry DeFrancis, who did most of this facilitation. She then gave a draft to our ad hoc special ed committee, who that committee itself reviewed it. There were parents that actually came to that work group. Do you want to talk about that at all, Dr. Krefler?
Yeah, I can jump in there.
All right.
So we had the diversity of the committee was beneficial in the sense that each person's lens or viewpoint on the policy manual contributed to the enrichment of it, or to make it a little bit more robust. One of the comments that I made was that this is version 1.0, and it's going to continue to be 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, as we begin to implement the procedure manual in the community and with the parents in terms of communication. The reason why I say communication is a lot of times there's a lot of tension when a child is referred or in the process, and this manual will help them understand the process a lot better, understand their rights. It's written in a manner that is both informative, and at the same time it gives them guidance to give them an idea of where they stand. And what I appreciated the most was that although there were criticisms, and that's what we actually want criticisms, it was collaborative. You can sense there was tension, but I think the tension was based on past history. So I'm hoping that this manual will help us forget about the past history and help us move forward.
And to that end, one of the suggestions, I believe it was during the public comments, was about creating a document that was perhaps a little more user-friendly. As you saw, it's a pretty, so what you got was a document about this size, which is the actual chapters. What I didn't include, because we're still formatting it and we want to make sure we have all the current documents, these are all the appendices. So it's about twice the size. So this document is both of these binders. So it's quite lengthy. However, if you're a special ed teacher new to Norwalk and you're like, well, what form do we use? Guess what? It's in the binder. This is going to be the Bible now. Everything anybody needs to know about special ed is going to be in here and easily referenced. So we took that, which will be available online so that people can review it. However, it is a rather lengthy document. What we wanted to do in hearing some of the parent comments was to pare this down, and we did it in two ways. We developed a document that we're going to call A Parent's Guide to Special Ed Services in Noroc Public School, and as you can see, it's a smaller document written in much more user-friendly terms, actually defining all of the disability categories and terms and acronyms that we use. So this will be given out when a child is referred to special ed. It'll be a much easier document for them to read. And then even smaller, but perhaps maybe more important, was a handbook for parents, what to do if your child is struggling in school. And this is basically designed in a frequently asked question format. So the families gave a lot of input in terms of what kinds of questions they had as their children started down the process. Even about SRBI and what happens during that, and when does a referral happen, and what does that mean, and what are the timelines. All of those kinds of very legal things are done in a much smaller and succinct document. So we'll have those available to families as well. So the policy and procedure manual is basically divided up into 9 chapters, going from identification, confidentiality, prior written notice and parental consent, evaluation and reevaluation, the PPT process, an IEP, least restrictive environment, students in private and religious schools, and then discipline. So pretty much covered everything that we needed to. This is required in all school districts, so this was a document that we really needed to have, so I'm glad that we're at that point. And now, unless anybody has any additional changes here, as soon as we're able to get some of the last formatting pieces done, this will now be available to our families and our staff. Questions, comments?
Yeah, just for my edification, what is, I see all these references, resources for chapter X, ED 1, 2, 3, what are those?
So that's this document
Okay.
right here.
So it's more, that's more than just the appendices, it's all these.
Right, it's any, like, if we referred to a letter, like it may be a letter that the Connecticut State Department of Ed had talked about, if we refer to a state form, that's an ED 603, all of those are in the appendix. And then this is done by chapter as well, so you can flip right to the appendix that goes with the chapter that you're in, and all of those appendices will be there.
Very nice, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is the short form, thing that the parents would be able to use, would it be possible for the board to get a copy of that?
Absolutely, yep.
If you could just email it to us.
I would be happy to do that.
Any other questions, comments? Yes.
First, go ahead, Eric can go first.
No, I was just pointing to notify
Pointing to
the
the
chair. He was staring in this direction, so I wanted to make sure Ms. Key's got it.
We're so
All right,
polite
go
here,
ahead.
that's a good thing. This is great. I want to thank everyone that was involved in this, because I think it's really helpful for parents, even for teachers, to have a comprehensive handbook like this. And I think it's
Absolutely.
just streamlined, it's easy to read, it has bullet items. I think will go a long way with families. It
And
really will.
I think the appendices, where if we do update forms, and even, because parts of this have to do with SRBI, if we update how we're doing our tiered interventions in those forms, it makes it easily updatable, because it's just a 3-hole punch, and it's in a different section of the document, so it makes it easy to keep current, which is important.
Absolutely, and I think especially for new teachers coming in, having a document or a package like this is critical.
Great.
Thank you.
And does this document include all the sticky note changes that you held up?
It
or-
sure does. It sure does. I do my job, Mr. Lyons.
Well, my thanks to Dr. Kreviker and his committee for taking such a thorough look at it. I appreciate that.
Okay.
All right.
All right,
No other
thank you.
questions? That'll do it. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Topper.
All right, so moving on to the action items on the agenda. We will start with the consent calendar. Tonight's consent calendar is sections 2A, approval of personnel, 2B, approval of budget transfers, and 2C, 1, 2, and 3, the 3 indicated class trips. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved,
Eric
Mr. Chair.
moves, Mike seconds. Any discussion on the consent calendar? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All in favor of the consent calendar, please indicate. And it looks unanimous. Okay, thank you. All right, next is approval of E Plus Group Inc. lease agreement. Who is going to explain this thing? Ralph.
Not all at once, right?
I took a quick look at it, and
Plus.
it would help to have
This came out of Finance Committee.
Yep.
just a quick summary of what this is about would help. You're getting your exercise
I
today.
am, definitely, so.
Over and under.
So, the E-Plus agreement is actually our licensing for all of our wireless access points throughout the district. So the 890 access points, they're a cloud-based system, they're all managed. In order to keep them updated, they update on a regular basis, similar to like Google updating their stuff on a regular basis. You need to have licensing. So this is just the annual license agreement for them. We've locked into pricing now for the next 5 years at $36,000.
Okay.
So.
So the 890 access points means receivers that are set up around the
Yes, yeah,
school system?
all the
System
antennas
to
and
pick
stuff
up
around,
and-
exactly.
Okay.
So, and as just so you know too, with this, the licensing continues on, so if one of them breaks, we replace it. We're not obligated to buy another licensing agreement with that, we just replace the unit itself.
Okay.
I would just point out, Ralph, we got a significant discount by locking in for 5 years, and it's a recent acquisition of Cisco, so they should be around for a little bit.
Yeah, it's about, if we were gonna do it annually, it would be about double the price.
Okay. Eric, and then
Mr. Simmons had his hand first. Hold
Artie.
it.
All right, Artie, and then Eric.
$36,000, is that for the term of the lease?
No, that's each year.
36,000 per year, okay, thank you.
Eric?
Thank you. I do remember having a rather robust dialogue around this at the Finance Committee. I did ask Ralph a number of questions that day, and, I think that this lease agreement definitely covers a lot of the ins and outs of our networking, so it's good price. And I really appreciated all of the discussion you gave to us on that.
Yeah, and the management capabilities that we get along with this are really
fantastic.
critical, so.
Yeah.
Ralph, last year, we appropriated, seems to me, about $250,000 to upgrade the Wi-Fi capacity, because we know that there were a lot of complaints, particularly, I think, at Norwalk High School, about capacity problems. Has that work all been implemented yet, or is it still in process?
Well, it's going to be a work in process for the next few years, but the money that actually was allocated has been implemented. So there's continuing work that we have to do. We were at, I don't want to get technical, but at 10-100 switches in the buildings. We're going to 10 gig. And then we'll actually be trying to put in 2 10-gig pipes. So basically what that means is we're going to be about 20-fold of the bandwidth that we would have had a year ago. So this is something that's going to take another year to still fully implement. But I think everybody's seen, and we've actually seen with the data, we're using terabytes of data a week at this point with our bandwidth. We're seeing that people are using the equipment, and they're not dropping off anymore. So, I mean, I think everybody's pretty confident that we've had Wi-Fi on and BYOD for the students throughout the year. So that's been going on along with the testing. So we really haven't had any major issues, knock on wood. But it's because we're slowly making the upgrades. One of the things that's holding us up currently is that we've been waiting for, and this is more of a federal issue, we've been approved for certain switches to be put into place, but we have to wait for the feds to release our E-rate funding so that we can pay the vendor to do this. So, because we do get a significant discount on the equipment, about 80%. So, a $100,000 switch would only cost us $20,000. But yes, we've been making upgrades to all the secondary schools. Over the next couple of years, we want to continue that. The next refresh will be at the elementary schools, but they don't use anywhere near as much bandwidth as the secondaries. So.
Artie?
So I always get the tweets from the kids when they can't log on with their iPhones to go on Facebook or something. But that has stopped for the last 2 months, so I will say what he's doing is working.
Okay. So you're our early warning system.
Yes, I am. They immediately.
Yeah. Great, thanks.
Val?
In terms of bandwidth, how are we in terms of the next 5 years, in terms of growth?
So we're going to be putting in a 1 10-gig switch for the district this year. Next year, what I'd like to do is improve it to 2 10 gigs, where basically the high schools, potentially the middle schools will be on 1 10-gig bandwidth, and then the rest of all the elementary schools will be on another. So, and that's typical for our size of a district, actually. I'm trying to remember the ratio that we want to be at, but by 2020, I believe we want to be at basically every 1,000 students that we should have a gig of data coming into the district. We're basically at that right now. We have 11,000 students. We're going to a 10-gig pipe. But by next year, we'll be, once again, at a 20-gig pipe, so we'll be well over that bandwidth. But a lot of our resources, everything that Dr. Connor is doing right now, they're all relying on on us using Chromebooks and using the technology. So we need to just continually implement and refresh our network infrastructure to make sure that it keeps up with, keeps up to date.
Just curious, if we were to convert to more e-textbooks, will we be able to sustain that and not get students having difficulty with access or getting dropped off?
Yeah. I think one of the bigger things that we'd have to worry about if we did decide to convert in any way like that, it's not a question anymore of bandwidth, because really the e-textbooks don't take up a lot of bandwidth. It's a question of making sure that we support them and that we actually have enough units. We've been implementing many Chromebooks. I mean, I don't have the exact number. I believe we're at about 7,200 right now. Don't quote me on that. It's around that number at the moment, and it keeps increasing by each month. So the question isn't anymore connecting the devices. It's making sure that we kind of support them in a way, and teachers are comfortable using them. So I think that's really what I want to spend a little bit more time on, is actually professional development around getting the comfort level there of actually understanding how to be able to use these devices on a regular basis.
Okay, thank you.
Ryan, did you have a question? No? Okay. Any other questions, comments? Eric? Yes?
I'm going to make a motion.
Oh, Yeah, that's a good idea. All right, motion is made to approve the E-Plus Group Inc. lease agreement. Is there a second? Heidi seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All in favor, please indicate. And unanimous, thank you. Okay, approval of 2017 calendar year board meeting schedule. This is just this is a requirement of the FOI Act. We have to approve at the end of each year, next year's regular meeting schedule. Of course, we can always schedule special meetings whenever we want. The the only change I would note on the attachment, well, two changes actually. One is for the January workshop, we're going to set that on January 12. That's in accordance with the email I sent today, the executive committee. We're going to have that's actually going to be a meeting devoted to the budget. We're canceling the January 3 meeting. We're going to have the January 12 meeting in order to give everybody a chance to get the budget fully developed before it comes to us. The other thing is that the executive committee has talked about it, and we've decided that we're going to move the workshop meetings back into the council chambers here. The other meeting room is a little cozier for the board, but it's very inconvenient for the public. It's sort of a cramped place. We can't do the live video feeds in there that we can do there. So we're going to move the meetings back into the council chambers unless, there's a conflict with the city meeting. So with those changes, the chair would entertain a motion to approve that meeting schedule. Eric moves. Is there a second? Sherelle seconds. Any discussion?
The rest of the meetings remain the same, first Tuesday and third Tuesday?
Yes.
After that, okay.
Yep. At 7 o'clock. Okay. All right. All in favor of adopting the schedule, please indicate. And that is unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Items 5 and 6 are curriculum, approval of K-5 curriculum maps for math and ELA, and approval of K-5 standards-based reporting system. You remember that we reviewed these at a workshop, informally gave our assent to them. This is simply the formal approval, so we're in the record, having established that. Mr. Kasimis, as chair, would you like to make the motion? Okay, on both items?
Yes.
Okay, so item 5 and 6 are moved by Mr. Kasimis, second by Eric. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor, please indicate. And good, the curriculum matters are approved. Next item is approval of policy 9323, electronic attendance at board meetings. Heidi, chair of policy committee.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Lyons. We initially looked at this particular policy for electronic participation back on September 20th, 2016. We had a small-scale and large-scale initiatives, and this was one of the initiatives we were looking at. We also looked at this policy on October 4th, as well as a special meeting on November 14th. I think looking at this policy and as a committee, what we're trying to do is, if we have a member that's unable to attend a meeting due to an illness, due to surgery, due to a business meeting, due to being away, that particular board member has a voice. Even though they can't physically be here for a board meeting, we will try to work out a way where we can have some type of participation, whether it's via video or whether it's you're conferencing in and you're able to be present and have a voice but not physically be here. I know that there were some concerns during one of our board meetings. I wasn't present during that meeting, but I did watch the tape on it, how many meetings you can be out. We looked at other policies from other districts, and we looked at it and we thought board members cannot be out more than 3 meetings. If they are out more than 3 meetings, they would need to get the approval of the board chair. And if the board chair is out, one of the executive committee members would be chairing that committee. We wanted this to be a comprehensive policy that we can look at, that we'd have in the books. And again, there were also some concerns as far as IT. We would have Ralph here if there were any type of issues or concerns. Ralph, do you want to speak a little bit more about that? If there were any concerns and a member couldn't log in or was able to be heard?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Climb on over.
You sat in the wrong place.
Come on down, Ralph.
That was good.
Soon, so, audio is definitely
Yeah.
not an issue at all. I mean, it's easy enough to set up a speakerphone, use it on the microphone. We do need, I probably need about a day's notice just to make sure that we
Right.
actually get the conference phone in here and get it set up. Video, you could do a video feed, but we really need to think through this.
Yeah.
Because what exactly are you seeing from the way that it would be set up in this room? Would it be on one of the monitors, or how would that look, and how can other people see what's going on? But audio is definitely not a concern. I think we just need to talk through exactly what that would look like, and there would be a couple pieces of equipment. I mean, it's not a large cost that would need to be bought to be able to make that happen, so.
Okay.
But it's
Thank you.
doable.
Absolutely. I think the audio hopefully would be the way to go on this, and we can try that out. And again, we're all here, we're all elected officials, we're here, we want to be present. This is more the exception to the rule. You can't participate, but you want to be able to participate, and you can't, again, be physically here, and you can do that electronically. That's what we're looking to do.
All right. You want to make a motion to approve the policy?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
All right. Is there a second? Eric, any discussion? Ms. Mosby?
Yes, I'm going to be voting no on this policy in relation to my email that I sent early on, and plus, I actually had an opportunity at the CADE convention to talk to board members of the different surrounding areas, Stanford, Danbury, all those areas, and to get their input on this policy. And although Stanford has the policy on their books, they do not implement it because they said that, they're here and they would like to not, go down that road. So and I spoke to the board member in other areas, and they all feel the same. I strongly feel that, we need to be here. I'm not too sure about, although we have some restrictions, and we say that these IT issues and everything, this is something that we have never done before, and I'm not going to just sit here and, my concern is if something does happen and we're in the middle of an important vote or something, and, we can't go back and try to, fix this. But other areas, I did speak to other board members, Stanford, Danbury, all other areas, and they are not, in favor of this type of policy at this time. So I will be voting no. So I just wanted to at least put it out. Thank you.
Brian?
I'm voting yes. This is the modern age, and we need to conduct business in a fluid, fashionable manner. I know in good faith, we had teachers show up to school this year without a contract because this board could not convene to vote to approve them as hires. So we shouldn't be in that position, not in this day and age. We should be able to act like that. I expect these instances to be rare when there's a lot of illness or some of us can't make it. But just to get things moving forward and not to stall what we're trying to do here. Ultimately, if a member, he or she is abusing it, the accountability is at the ballot box. Thanks.
Any other comments? Mike?
I'm also in favor of this, and I'm not sure if I've maybe discussed this at the policy committee meeting more so than at the board meeting, but I sit on the board of CES, which is the RESC for our area, and so I did use those connections because it's composed of 18 different school districts that are, and there's a rep from each one, so I've reached out to all of them, and not everyone had a policy, but a number of them did, including Stanford, as we discussed, Stratford, District 9, Greenwich, Weston, so it was a range, Westport, Darien, there was a range of towns that had it, some small, some large, and most said that, their members didn't use it particularly. It was not something that definitely got abused. Some had formal written policies, others had more vague policies, but I think this is, the 21st century. Fortune 500 companies, boards have meetings in such a manner where board members do attend remotely. Governments operate in the same way. There's no reason why we should not join the 21st century. So I'm very much in favor, and I think, it's not like we're cutting edge. They're on the city side, they do as well. This is nothing that we're doing we're not a pioneer, we're just joining the 21st century. Thanks.
I could just add one other thing, and then Eric. Again, it's the exception, not the rule, like Brian had just mentioned. I don't think we're going to see a lot of this, but there will be extenuating circumstances where you're just not physically able to be present. I'll reiterate again, you want to have a voice, you want to be able to be here, but you can't physically be here. So, and it's also a choice. If you're home and you're ill and you choose not to come to the meeting and you can't, you don't have to participate. It's okay. But we want to put that out here. It is a robust, I believe we spent a lot of time, a robust policy. Policy committee spent at least 3 meetings, full meetings on it and discussing it. And also, I'd like to mention that was brought back to the board and we heard you. There were some concerns about some IT issues. How many times a board member can be out before they need to get special approval from the chair. So we took all that into consideration. We also looked at other policies as well with other districts. Stamford was closest to us and had a policy, but again, ours is more robust. It definitely has a lot more information in, and I felt like we needed to have something like that on the books, which we will.
Eric?
Thank you. I'm also in favor of this policy. I definitely appreciated the concerns that were brought forward initially, and I do feel that those were addressed. What I did appreciate was Ralph's comments this evening that, giving a day's notice. Where I go back to are a number of meetings that, since I've been elected in 1 year, that we've had to cancel due to lack of quorum. And that was surprising to me. And I think that in some of those instances, there was an emergency situation where a board member couldn't be present due to illness or something else. But there have been times when we know that there have been a number of board members who are not able to be here due to outside responsibilities outside of the board. And, sometimes we do have to make a decision. But having this opportunity to still be present if we are in the capacity to be able to do so, I really do appreciate this. And also specifically, the ability to start with voice but look at a video processing, I think that makes sense because we don't have to do that. It's something that we can look at, but being able to not only have a voice, but make sure that we are able to be here and represent this board in our full capacity, having this option in place to make sure we do not run into those circumstances again is the majority reason as to why I'm supporting this policy.
Okay. Any other comments? Sherelle?
I stuck close to home in Norwalk, so I spoke to some Norwalk elected officials, former superintendents, and just constituents. So it's sort of, there was a toss, but if you bear with me, I'd like you to hear some of the concerns. Elected official, I believe if you make a commitment to public service, the public deserves your respect to be present, especially if votes are taken. Another, if it's unfair to the public, especially if we're not able to phone in. Another, it was very interesting. She felt we have relinquished too much to the 21st century technology as it is. Human one-on-one conversation is becoming a lost art form, so on and so forth. But she said she believes too much 21st century is the reason behind cyberbullying and why it's become so prevalent with our children, no longer learning and practicing the art of face-to-face personal conversations. However, if this is done, I believe a board member should abstain and have no voting power. Others, they thought it was okay if someone is out of town on an emergency. Others thought it was okay as long as it's not abused. Precautions should be in place, and this should rarely be used if some of you have referenced it's the exception, not the rule. One person went as far as to say the maximum number of times used should be clear and clear criteria written into the policy about abuse should be inserted. And finally, one person just decided, there were more, but a lot of them agreed. One person thought the pros is that it allows more flexibility for members to attend, and it's all done in the workplace. Cons, members who do not have technology may not have the same advantage. Privacy of executive sessions should be a concern, although I don't think we're going to videotape executive.
Yeah, the policy prohibits it.
That we
Yes.
can't.
No participation
Right.
in executive
executive
sessions
sessions,
from
so that's
remote
out.
access.
Right,
Yep.
and that's in there.
Specifically clarified.
That's in the policy.
And Ralph addressed this tonight. What happens if someone is trying to call in or log in, but technology is not working on either end? And just as a funny, they thought, you know, if they may not want someone's vote, so you don't want to have someone prohibit someone from calling in. Let's see, and if this does pass, the policy needs to be clear. You don't want too much power in anyone's hand that will deliberately ignore someone else. Technology should be fair, such as phone, and there needs to be a backup plan in the event that technology is not working. So those were just some of the concerns. So it seems like even the people who were sort of on the fence agreed it should be limited, and there should be something written in for abuse. And it's, so.
Okay, thank you. Artie?
Yeah, I just wanted to address some of the comments that were made online. One of the things I read is that if you oppose this policy, then you're not technically savvy. I do oppose the policy. I think I've made my statements pretty clear. And I am probably the most technical savvy on the board. I mean, I've got over 30 years' experience in IT. And just to remind some of you, when we did the superintendent interviews, that the moment I left the room, the system crashed. And so I know, I don't mean to be funny, but the truth is...
It did happen.
It did happen. I mean, and so that's my fear. I know we live in the 21st century. Believe me, we've been in the 21st century for 16 years. Well aware of it. I live by this thing. But you know what? I FaceTime my daughters at college, and it freezes, it crashes. We got to pick it up another time. And so my fear is that it's going to lengthen our meetings. It's going to start to slow down our meetings. If somebody crashes, do we have to stop to get the vote? What do we do? And so I just wanted to address those comments. And again, and I still do oppose it, but I do appreciate the work you did.
Thank you. Thanks to the committee, yes.
Eric?
Thank you. I just did want to comment on Mr. Simmons' points. I actually am not as favorable to a more technology-based system as far as a video conferencing thing. I think just the pure capacity of having someone able to call in. I've been a part of many conference lines, you know, in my professional world and other nonprofit responsibilities and board responsibilities I've been involved in, and I think that's where I find the most use, at least in the capacity to have participation in the instances when you cannot be here. I do agree that there can be some severe technological issues with certain video capacities, especially for those that might not know how to use them or lack of ability to use it if you don't have a camera on your computer. But everybody has a phone, at least I think so. I do hope so.
Everybody has the iPads too, remember? We were given those.
This is true. This is true.
Yeah.
But still, regardless of that, I think that, you know, just the policy in itself doesn't state specifically what the method of remote access would be. And I do want to reiterate, you know, to Sherelle's comments, I do appreciate those comments. And I think that we addressed a vast majority of those when we went back and revisited it. We've limited the number to that an individual can participate. We've made sure that the executive board would have to replace the chairperson in case the chairperson was not present to run the meeting, so the chairperson could not run the meeting remotely. I think also very specifically, and this was something that I brought forward, was executive session should not be covered in any instances in remote access because of the privacy issues on it. So I feel much more comfortable, especially in the security of this policy. I would be interested if we did move forward into a video capacity, but I think for me personally, I think being able to utilize a voice remote access would give us a lot of benefit, especially, again, I'll reiterate, in those instances when we have not had quorum present, able to run and conduct our business at this meeting.
Shirley?
I'm listening to all this, and I see that we're here trying to accommodate how we can function here as a board, but I don't think any consideration has been given to the public. There are people out there who would love to come to board meetings, but they can't. Who would love to have public comments, but they can't. Are we going to now sit here and start giving them their opportunity to come here and talk? I hear you, Eric, too, about you said since you've been here, it's very rare that this board has, cancel meetings, it's just that this year, I think there was a little, but it's not a norm, it's not an abuse of the policy, and I thought policies were put in place that's supposed to benefit all, especially for our children and the community and all that. I thought that working with the community as well as, parents, community people, all of us, in order for us to have a common ground. If we, as board members, get out there and we're elected as an elected official, that we're gonna be here at the table to represent them, when they come to that mic, when they do make it here, because some parents have to, and community people have to really fight to get here, when they get here, they expect to have a body here. If they take the time to come, then we should at least do our best to make sure that we're here. I hear you saying that, about, people might be sick or something like that, but I've seen people that come in, and they bring their children and all that stuff just to get here. But they want us here. They want someone to actually talk to. That makes them feel good to have a body. If they can look at you and say, hey, these are my concerns, or this is what I'm happy about. But, as I said before, I did speak to a couple of board members. See, I actually physically talked to these board members, so not, and we talked in depth about this right here. And they feel that the strongest point of part of being a board member is being here for your constituents, for the people here. And that's why I understand that, yes, we put some mechanism in place, but this is something that's not fully vetted as far as I'm concerned. That could be my opinion, but I feel very strongly that we need to be here at the table, and and again, that's why I'm going to vote no, because we need to, and to at least give an opportunity to the public, if they can have this type, if we're going to do it, then how, what about them?
Any other discussion? Sherelle?
I just have a couple of questions. I know with the people that I spoke to that were sort of on the fence, most of them were saying 2 maximum. I'm just wondering how you came to 3.
I believe it was mentioned during one of those meetings that I wasn't present in an actual board meeting, and then it was brought back to policy. But we thought 3 would be a fair number. Again, I just want to mention and reiterate again, we all want to be here. We're elected to be here, and we know that. But I believe if you cannot physically be here and you still want to actively participate, you can't be here, but you want to be able to do that, you should have access to that.
No, I totally understand. I understand your viewpoint. My question is, how, why 3, as opposed to 1 or 2 or 4 or 5?
I think 3 was, from what I recall, 3 was a fair number, and I think it was mentioned during that board meeting that I wasn't present for.
Eric, you got an answer on that?
I don't have an exact answer, but I do remember that there were some other policies that had as much as 6.
And some that didn't have any.
And yes, and there were some that were actually written in that we did review that did not have any.
Right.
So I think that, we went to the 3 just as to cut that number in half. I also feel that, I don't believe that many of us would actually even engage in that many. As far as having a seat at the table and being here for the public, it was something that I actually did think about, and I wouldn't be here regardless if I was going to enact the policy. I'm speaking from my personal perspective as an elected official. I would not use this policy to attend a meeting that I could attend on my own volition. I'm not going to use this policy in order to skirt being here in order to do my duties. This would be in an instance for myself, and I believe with others that I have had discussions with on and off of this board on this topic, that it is in the instances where I knew I would not be able to be here under any other circumstances, which, let's face it, there are some times when we as board members cannot be here in this room, in order to have our participation, to continue to have our voice for our representation. I still just go back to the point, and I appreciate Ms. Mosby's points on it, that if I'm not going to be here already, or if a board member is not going to be here as it is, there is no difference. It's having their opportunity to bring the voices from their constituency, which I hope that they would have been in connection with, to be able to have that discussion point at that moment.
Are you addressing Ms. Mosby, or are you addressing my question about 3? I'm a little.
I addressed your on 3 and then I jumped over to Ms. Mosby. So that was the addressing on the 3.
So back
There
to
was-
Sherelle on more, you had more questions,
Okay,
right?
in the immediate.
Sorry.
No, that's okay, I just was a little confused. Because I understand everyone's viewpoint.
Mhm.
I'm just wanting the public to really understand what we're doing and why. The medium, so are we just using phones, no video? And that, I guess it's because of executive sessions that I'm a little bit concerned.
Well, if you look at section 5, it says the chairperson may decide technical questions, whether audio only or video technology will be used, call-in numbers and stuff of that sort. So it would be up to whoever the board chair is to make technical decisions, which presumably they would work with Ralph and the staff. I mean, I can elaborate on that point. We adopted a rule very similar to this at the Board of Estimate 9 years ago when I was on the board. I served on the board for 6 years, and out of, well, it's got to be about 130 meetings, I called in once. I think it was used maybe a half a dozen other times in 9 years. However, in the one occasion when I called in, I was actually called from City Hall because the city, the Board of Estimate needed to approve a $22 million bond issue that night, or we would miss a favorable interest rate the next day. They were one short of a quorum. They found me at home running a 101 fever. And they said, I can give you about 15 minutes before I collapse. I participated in the meeting, and we were able to get the bond issue done. Now, you know, as Eric's pointed out, you know, in terms of, you know, commitment to the board, I on 2 occasions this past year drove 125 miles from my office to get here, as member after member emailed in as recently as a half hour before the meeting saying I can't make it, and we didn't have a quorum. I was certainly committed to getting here. And I think if one of those 5 members who couldn't make it because they were home with a fever or they were out on a business trip could have called in, we could have conducted the business of the meeting. So, you know, when I hear discussions about, well, what if there's a technical glitch or whatever, I will tell you that my anticipation is that just like the Board of Estimate, which has never used video conferencing, it's always been a conference call. If you're using, you know, audio conference call technology, this isn't 21st century, this is 1980s. This technology is so reliable that it's more reliable than our power supply. How many times have you had the power go out at your house, and if you've still got a landline, you pick it up and there's still a dial tone? Okay, we're more likely to lose the lights in this building than we are to lose, you know, a landline-based audio conference call. So, you know, the likelihood of failure is pretty low. And if you do have a failure, I mean, my view is, okay, let's say in the scenario, one person was able to call in and we established a quorum. We're half hour into the meeting and we lose them and can't get them back. All right, well, we adjourn the meeting. So, big disaster, we adjourn the meeting, which we would have had to do before the meeting even started if they weren't able to call in the first place. So what have you lost? Maybe you got a half hour, an hour or two of work's done. And, you know, the public wants to see us doing our job. And I think, you know, all of us are unpaid volunteers. We all work at other jobs. If my job, for instance, takes me out to California or Texas or Florida, as it periodically does, if the alternatives are, well, I'm just not here, or I'm willing to take the time out of whatever conference I'm attending, let's say, to call in and participate in the meeting, I think that shows a greater commitment on the part of the member to participate than to simply blow off the meeting and say, well, I got something else going on, I can't go. So my own view is, from direct experience in the Board of Estimate, it's going to be used rarely. When it is used, it'll probably be because it can fill a real gap that people need. And this policy actually has a lot of restrictions and protections in it, which the Board of Estimate policy does not. You know, the three meeting limit. We have about 24 meetings a year, so that's about, you know, you got to make 21 out of 24. You know, we don't have too many people who make every single meeting anyway, because you're sick or you're going on a vacation trip or whatever. people who want to do this can't simply do it on a whim. They have to notify the superintendent and the board chairperson in advance, so we make sure the right technology is set up. You have the limit. I like the idea that the chairperson should not be able to run the meeting remotely. The chairperson is the person calling in, and the vice chair or the secretary should run the meeting. And most of the rest of these things are similar to the Board of Estimate policy to make sure that members of the public can attend the actual location. They have to be able to hear people that are talking. If the person who's talking remotely refers to a document, they're not allowed to use that unless the document is available in this room. And in terms of the video, you know, I actually looked back and we had done 3 Skype interviews of potential search firms, and then about 14 Skype interviews of potential superintendent candidates. So give or take 1 or 2, about 17 Skype interviews. And one of them we had the glitch where we lost video because Artie left the room and another board member pushed the wrong button. So that's a 94% success rate with a pretty quirky technology.
That's because I was in the room with the other ones.
Skype. And even in the case of the one where we lost video, we still were able to maintain audio and complete the interview. Interestingly, the only person that we lost video on was Manny Rivera.
We hired him.
So I think, you know, my view of this, particularly from my experience in the Board of Estimate, is it's a safety valve. It's something that's going to be used rarely, but it, A, could come in real handy in a situation where you may have a quorum problem, and B, it will allow members who have to be away to continue doing their job as a board member by calling in. So, anyway, that's my thoughts.
Quick question. Does this policy extend to committees?
Yes.
It does?
Yeah. Under the same rules and restrictions. Anything else? No? Okay. All right, we'll proceed. Oh, I'm sorry, Shirley.
Okay, or in its committees, okay. All right, okay, meeting in its committees. Okay, all right.
All right. Okay, we'll proceed to a vote. All in favor of approving the policy, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, it's 5 in favor, 4 opposed. The policy is adopted. All right. Next is November 2016 monthly financial report. Mr. Hamilton.
Okay, the November report is in your package. We are 41.7% of the way through the fiscal year, 20% of the way through the school year. We are 13 weeks into the school year out of 42 weeks, which is about 31% of the way through on a weekly basis. So if you're looking at some of the wage accounts and seeing them approaching the 30% number for school year employees, that's about where you'd expect it to be, and you'd expect it to be a little over 40% for the employees who work on a 12-month calendar year basis. The budget year over year is up, as you can see from the summary report, 3.49% over where we were at the same point last year, which is right in line with where we would expect to be. In terms of wages, we're at just about 30% expended on wages, and again, that's where we would expect it to be based on where we are through the school year as well as where we are through the fiscal year. So for the roughly 85% of our budget or so that is wages, we're right on target, right where we would expect to be at this point in the school year. The employee benefit line, you'll see the biggest item there, of course, is health insurance benefits. These are contributions that are made periodically to the insurance fund. There has been one contribution of $5 million that has been made to the insurance fund this year, and that is made roughly quarterly. We make contributions to the insurance fund, and so we are on track with the expected contributions there. And again, the other benefit line items, longevity, social security, are pretty much tracking where we would expect them to track. Unemployment, which is not a major expense for the district, but unemployment, you'll see, is running a little heavier than expected, so we'll probably need some transfers later in the year to cover that, depending on how the remainder of the year goes there. Professional and technical services, the 300 series of accounts. The big items here are primarily related to special education, and as there was last year, there is a lag in getting some of these bills processed and paid. So you see we've spent about 9% of the budget in the 330 account. But we do expect that that will pick up as we go through the year. Property services, some of the property services are front-loaded, as I've explained before, particularly some of the repair items that relate to summer work occur during the summer, as well as annual maintenance contracts, which are typically paid at the beginning of the year. So you'll see that we're about 42% of the way expended in total on property services, but again, I don't see any problem with any of the property service accounts based on, prior year expenses and evaluation of where we are in the current year. The 500 series of accounts is for other purchase services, and the big items here, transportation, we do prepay a significant portion of our transportation bill, so even though we've expended, you'll see on the public student transportation, we've expended about 75% of that. That is expected based on our current contract language, or current contracts. The other expenses in the 500 account, as well as the 562 and 563 account, are special ed related. And again, there is a lag in some of the special ed payments, particularly the out-of-district tuition account. At this point, we've expended about $1.5 million, or about 17% of the budget. We do expect that we are going to come close to our budget number at this point on out-of-district tuition. We are, at the present time, doing a fair amount of analysis with the special ed department to prepare updated and more complete projections of where we would expect to end the year on special ed. So that work is still undergoing, is still on way, I can't report any definitive numbers at this point. We do think that the out-of-district tuition account, we think that we're in decent shape there. You'll remember that wasn't one account where we ran over last year, but we did increase the budget fairly substantially in out-of-district tuition, and at least the early initial analysis we've done suggests that the out-of-district tuition number we think is going to come in on budget based on what we're seeing at this point. Again, as I said, we're still doing further work on the consultant services accounts in the earlier 200 series, 300 series accounts that I went over earlier. So those we're still really not able to provide much of a forecast on, but we are working on that with special education. Supplies and materials are pretty much running where we'd expect them to at this point. They're not a huge budget driver for us, but we've spent about 30% of the $6.3 million in supplies and materials, and again, that's about where we would expect to be at this point. Likewise with equipment, we're at about 49% expended, but a lot of that is related to instructional software and some other payments that are paid that are front-loaded, if you will, during the fiscal year. And the last series of accounts, the 800 series of accounts, minor items, dues, fees, and memberships are also running where we would expect at this point during the fiscal year. So at this point, There's, I don't think there's any, unfavorable news at this point to report. We are still working with special ed, and we know that is the area of the budget that has been a concern in the past. But certainly outside that area, outside of special ed, we're very comfortable with where we are on all of the other accounts in the budget and are working diligently to prepare a more complete forecast, since we are coming up on, well, we're now 5 months through the year in total, so.
Okay.
Okay.
Any questions, comments? Shirley?
The student transportation service, 510 and 511, does that include the special ed buses, or is that?
It's a separate account. Let me just turn to the page here, see if I can pick that out. Let's see, transportation. Yeah, I'm trying to find it. Okay, so the 510 is the okay, you know what? Yes, that's a consolidated number. So on the bottom of page 4, the 510 account includes both the non-public or regular student transportation, as well as the special education transportation expenses. This report rolls everything up by object code so that it doesn't come, if we gave you every single individual line item in the budget, the report would probably be a couple hundred pages long. So we roll it up by object, but we do have it segregated in the budget, so we have that information available. It's just aggregated for this report.
Okay. And 511 doesn't include any, so we're all set with that. Or is that the same?
511 is non-public, so we do provide, under state law, we're required to provide some transportation services to non-public schools, and that's what that line item covers.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? I will say I'm encouraged at the fact that the skyrocketing of the outplacement costs in special ed seems to have leveled off. We did increase the budget significantly so that we were tracking what we were spending last year, but it doesn't seem like it has continued.
Right, that's the indication we have at this point. And again, we're still working, evaluating those numbers, but that is the indication we have at this point.
Okay, that's good news. All right, thank you.
Tom, before you sit down, somehow the budget goals were left up here instead of for the public. Can you take these?
Oh, sure.
And give one to each member of the media and Ms. Jordan, who just emailed us wanting them.
Technology.
Technology at work.
At its best.
All right. All right, so we'll move on to committee and representative reports. Let's see, who should we start with? Let's start over on this side this time. You want to give us an update what's going on with curriculum?
Sure, a lot of things going on in curriculum.
All right.
Dr. Connor is working hard. Where is he?
He's hiding, so you can't see him.
He's working too hard. I don't know how he gets it all done. We had a presentation, was it last week, I think, on the summer program, summer school? Yes. Is that correct? Yes. Great things are happening. They went ahead and did a debrief and analyzed all the numbers, and everything's looking great. They've just learned some new things to go forward for next year, and so it's really promising. Numbers are going up because of this. Good stuff here.
Excellent.
Good work. I know I'm kind of summarizing everything. He could probably get up and talk for 2 hours about it. But also we had the music department in, and I was shocked to find out that the high school music program has not been changed in 31 years. It's not been looked at, revised, or anything. And so they are now looking at it. They've developed a curriculum map, not only for high school, but also elementary school. And they're going to redo the whole program and make it more 21st century. So it's really promising. So we had a
Needed.
great- huh?
It's
Yes.
needed. It really
Yeah,
is.
so we had a great presentation there.
Good.
Interesting, the number of students that participate in the arts are equal to the amount in athletics. So yeah, the numbers are really,
Great.
really high. The only thing is, we only offer like drama or orchestra, so we're looking to maybe do something else. There's other schools that offer how to make sound beats and things like that, so we just threw a lot of things out there. So they're working on that. They're going to give us another presentation soon. The other thing I do want to report on is the IB over at Brian Mcmahon. As you know, Dr. Rivera brought that in, suggested it for Brian Mcmahon, and they took it and ran with it. They've been now doing this for the last 2.5 years, I believe, trying to get certified. They had the governing body was in to meet with everybody at Brian Mcmahon and central office members. Everything is favorable. It looks like they're going to get it.
Good.
There's a couple little tweaks that are going to come out in the report that they have to do. But they already have 40 students that have already applied for the IB program. They have 20 teachers that have already been trained. And one of the things that I heard from the teachers is that it has made them a better teacher, and not just the IB, but overall. It's an amazing program. I can sit here and talk really. I got a quick summary on it, but I took so many notes. But I have to hand it to Susan Kroschitz and her staff. They did a phenomenal job doing this. They've been so immersed in it, and it's going to be amazing when we get it in. So.
Excellent.
I want to thank Mr. Kusimis for representing the board at this very important meeting that involved two representatives of IB in the United States and the actual chief academic officer of IB World from The Hague.
Wow.
So this was a very high-level meeting. Our objective was to impress them that with our commitment and how this fit into the program and so on, and you were a great asset at that meeting, and thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent, good work. All right, let's see, facilities. What's going on, Mike? Nothing much, right?
No, just a couple little things. We did have a meeting right after Thanksgiving on the 29th. We went into more detail, and Dr. Adamowski really went beyond the call to delineate how he envisioned a STEM school at the Ponus Ridge campus and how it would be set up with kind of an upper school and a lower school, what the curriculum could be like, the number of sections. He really addressed all the issues, that we had been asked. Some of it, in the end of the day, when you look at the state process, typically these issues would have maybe been addressed further down the road under the Ed Spec committee, but we handled it up front. There was a member of the School Governance Council from Ponus in attendance, and we have really had a very thorough discussion of what the proposed plan there was. In addition, we looked at the survey that we had conducted under the auspices of Brenda Williams, and we had over 700 respondents. It was a really amazing mix with roughly a third from South Norwalk, people who live in South Norwalk. We had parents, we had a range of schools represented, and pretty much the data, no matter how you cut it, all said the same thing, which were, 85% of the respondents were in support of a school in South Norwalk, and it really didn't matter what the background of that respondent was. It was pretty much across groups we saw that. So that data was, I think, really powerful. It really showed we had done our homework. We had listened to the community. We were discussing options that everyone really supported. I think some of what we're looking at, considering now, has evolved a little bit since that survey was developed, but I don't think it impacts the value of that survey at all. That survey was super valuable, and Brenda's to be commended for really having collected so much data, both digitally as well as on paper, from parents who have their kids at Columbus to parents who have their kids at the pre-K program, the Odyssey program at the Ely School, where we had, I think, almost 100 respondents just from them alone. So it was really, I thought, terrific, and I think everybody on the committee and in the audience that night were really taken by the fact that we had done our homework. In addition, we did look at demographics and where students are located. Our team looked at how many students were in walking distance of both the Ely campus and the Columbus campus, and they used a quarter-mile range, because they started with a half mile, which is, if you know, those are the rules under the state for bus service for a K through 3 student, K through grade 3 student, and that half-mile range was just, there were too many kids. So they narrowed it to a quarter mile, and at the margin you had more kids, not a lot more, but at the margin you did have more kids within that quarter-mile band of the Columbus campus versus the Ely campus. And the other data piece that came out was that you could not have an exclusively neighborhood school, be it at the Ely site or the Columbus site, because you would not meet the state's requirement for racial balance targets. So it is now obvious that the brand new school we're talking about building would have an element of a magnet component as well as a neighborhood school. So I think the numbers were, depending how you decided to do it, something on the order of 2/3, 1/3 neighborhood and magnet. And we will be discussing this further at our next facilities meeting, which will be on December 13th, which will be, I think at this point, dedicated exclusively to the South Norwalk options and talking about where would be the optimal place to locate a new school, and where would the optimal place to locate the existing Bank Street magnet school known as Columbus. So, we have been hard at work, Mike. Doing some things, and I think I was just talking to Tom some more today. I've been in dialogue with the superintendent, what's left to do for the PONUS project, and I think we obviously need to do more discussions on the South Norwalk. We need to do some more homework on our options there, and then the board will have a workshop looking at all these options in detail on the 20th of December. John Ireland, sorry, not Bill Ireland, but John Ireland from Silver Petroselli Architects, as well as Mike Zuba from Malone and McBroom, who was at our last facilities meeting, will both be at this meeting at the workshop for the full board, and you'll hear about how they came to the conclusions and the recommendations that they came up with, and what the numbers look like. So that's pretty much where we are. I think the committee is hoping to meet before that December 20th workshop to vote on what we think is the recommendation to the full board, and then the full board will be voting based on the calendar that's now been developed on January 17th for our recommendations for what that facilities plan, phase 1 of the facilities plan should be.
Okay.
So that's where we stand.
Thank you. Negotiations Committee has now completed negotiations with 3 out of the 5 unions that we had outstanding, ESG, the Executive Support Group, the nurses, and the technicians. At the moment, our outside counsel and counsel for the unions are wordsmithing the documents, and when they're ready, we will bring them to the board for consideration and a vote. We have 2 negotiations that are outstanding. Custodians and food service, and there are active meetings going on now to continue those negotiations. Heidi, Policy Committee.
Yes, we had a meeting tonight at about 5:30 this evening, so it's been a long night. We did discuss homeschooling policy. We discussed it during our last meeting. We brought it back again tonight for discussion. We're tweaking it, making some revisions, and we'll be bringing it back again to policy for further discussion, hopefully action. We had our Wellness Policy Committee in. Both Lisa and Teresa were here, and we had a great meeting discussing wellness. We've been working on wellness, I believe, since March, so it's been ongoing. They've been working closely with Brenda over the summer, so we're finally getting that in order. It will be a really comprehensive, robust policy. The committee is made up a diverse group: health services, nursing, guidance, food services, physical education, health education, a lot of active members. I believe it's about 35 members that are actively participating. One mentioned tonight, and I wanted to bring this up to you, Mr. Lyons, as chair, to perhaps have a liaison from the board represent the board on this wellness committee. They are looking for some feedback on that, so if we could perhaps do that.
All right. I can look into that.
We will also, again, be bringing that back to policy for further discussion, and then hopefully be brought back to the board for discussion again, and then possible action. So we've been very busy on the policy committee, so I want to just thank everybody on policy for working hard on getting some of these policies implemented.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Finance, Mr. Meek.
Yeah, it's the calm before the storm. Stephen forecasted a little tonight. We won't have a regular meeting on December 8th. We will likely move the December 12th meeting back to December 10th to accommodate schedules and what we have to do per the charter to get a budget approved. So the idea being January 10th will give the committee a night to dig through the numbers in a consolidated presentation from staff. On the 12th, we can have a workshop amongst all of us. Mike has advertised this earlier to us. And then we will have a busy night of voting on the 17th. Okay. So without that, I don't have anything else.
Okay. Dr. Crevecoeur, what's going on with special ed?
Well, we just finished providing feedback on the standard operating procedures manual for special education. What we're going to do next is, next week, our next meeting is on the 13th. We're going to start looking at the correct reports again, looking at the recommendations, and trying to set up a sort of a timeline of accomplishments to try and see what have we done so far, what do we need to do in terms of just general open discussions, and to try to come up or set up some sort of table of some sort to try and document it, just in terms of dates, nothing very sophisticated. That will be our December meeting, which might spill over into January. In January, the hope is to have that table finalized and to ask Dr. Topper to give us a summary of what's happened so far since the beginning of the school year, so we can also start plugging in into those cells, besides dates, accomplishments and next to-dos, what's up on the next agenda. Following that meeting, I'm going to ask Mr. Hamilton to give us an update on the budget, the special ed budget, both for the general budget and for the special appropriation, to see where we are with that and to look at how it's interacting with the timeline.
Excellent. That's what we need to do. We need a committee that's watching these.
Bless you.
As we know, we've seen these correct reports come and go, and without anybody watching the store, a lot of stuff didn't happen. So I'm very pleased that the committee's going to be doing that watchdog role there. Okay, that covers the committees. I'm just going to note, I emailed the board today talking things over the executive committee just to reiterate our schedule. We have a lot going on with facilities and a lot going on with finance. So at our December 13th is going to be the facilities committee meeting on the South Norwalk School. Their last meeting was on the demographics and PONUS. They'll meet again on December 20th to make recommendations to the board regarding phase 1 of the school building program. And then on December 20th, 2 weeks from today, we'll have a board meeting solely devoted to the facilities plan. Be a workshop, and that's the entire focus of that meeting. The board meeting on January 3rd is canceled. We are not going to meet on January 3rd. That meeting is going to be moved to January 12th, which is a Thursday evening. On Tuesday, January 10, the Finance Committee will do its review of the budgets. This change in meeting schedule is to permit the Finance Department to get the budget in a strong format, not just give us something that's, half put together. So, Finance Committee on the 10th. We will have a board meeting on January 12th. Again, that will be a budget workshop. The entire meeting will just be focused on our operating budget and our capital budget. And then on the January 17th meeting, that's going to be the mother of all meetings, we would be scheduled to vote on the capital budget, the operating budget, and phase 1 of the facilities plan. So bring your sodas and cookies for that meeting. So that is that's our work schedule basically for the next 6 weeks. All right. Finally, board member announcements. Why don't we start on this side? Any announcements coming this way?
The Turkey Day game was fun to attend. That was nice to watch, and also to watch the band during halftime. That was fun, and got to see some of the Dr. Connor was there, Mr. Simmons. Everybody was pretty much there that I've seen. It was fun. And I actually enjoyed watching the students who are not playing more than the game. In the sense that, I got to see them like have fun and talk to each other and like teenagers like walking around all over the place.
Yeah.
So it was nice to see them in a non-school context. Prior to that, I was at Ponus Ridge for their career day. And I saw some of those students that were in the classes that I actually went to. So it was nice to see them outside of school, and they actually saw me and waved. That was cute.
Good.
That was nice.
Anything else coming this way?
I couldn't stay for the whole game, but what was it, like 44-7? So there were other things.
As a Norwalk High graduate, I was pleased to hear that.
And, for the other 30 out of 40 years, we never win.
I know.
Yeah, we got to go.
You got to celebrate it on those rare occasions when we do.
Thanks,
Sherelle,
Mike.
anything? Heidi?
Yes, I couldn't make it. I was out in Chicago, but I heard great things about the game. I was rooting for everybody. Couple things. I went to Lockwood Matthew Mansion Young Writers Competition, which I try to go to every year representing the board. We had 2 third graders from Columbus win, as well as a Nathan Hale Middle School 7th grader. So it's just nice. It's not a matter really of winning, but they put so much heart and effort into their writing, and they're acknowledged. Dr. Adamowski was there, as well as the mayor, and it was really a great event that happened. Actually, I went last week to performance by West Rocks Middle School, their band, 7th and 8th graders at Stamford Town Center at the mall. They were amazing, as always. So our music performers are outstanding.
Maybe an old curriculum, but they certainly do a lot with it.
They do. They really do. That's true. And also, just as a reminder, we have candlelight for Norwalk High School and Brian McMahon. We're going to miss Brian McMahon's because that's one of our meetings on a Tuesday. Unfortunately, I have to call Ron and just let him know if we could schedule that another time because it always falls on one of our meetings. But Norwalk High School is will be happening on December 19th, 20th, and 21st. And their performance, I can't even say enough great things about our high schools. I mean, they really go all out, and it's just a wonderful event. So hopefully all of us or some of us can go either the 19th, 20th, or 21st.
Did you have something else?
Yeah, I forgot to, I neglected to say that Dr. Costanzo was there. I just wanted to make sure I recognized him. And I have to apologize to him because the announcer said Mr. Costanzo. So I didn't have the minutes. If I had the minutes, I would have gave them the minutes to let them know that it's Dr. Costanzo. Next year. You're welcome.
I had the pleasure with my wife of attending the annual Strings Festival that the school system holds at City Hall. My kids used to play in that year after year, starting in 5th grade. They start with a 5th grade strings group, and then they work all the way up to the high school kids. It's amazing to see, you start off with the 5th graders, and they're pretty good for 5th graders, but then you hear the middle school, and then particularly the high school, it sounds like the New York Philharmonic. They're just extraordinarily good, and it was a real pleasure to see that, and the hall was packed. It was a really nice event. Mike, anything?
A couple odds and ends. So I went to a health class at Brian McMahon the other day, and it was really scary because
you realize how unhealthy you've been lately?
Yes, basically. So the motto, what I'm going to say is, don't drink a smoothie. It's really, and the teacher there, Steph Peckham, does an outstanding job. My son totally fell in love with her, and their kids popping in and out of her class because she's got a big fan club. But these kids had to look up, and they used Chromebooks, and they got in teams and had to figure out, and they had like a Starbucks, a McDonald's, Robex, one other chain, Dunkin' Donuts, and then the yogurt drink that they sell in the cafeteria. And kids had to figure out how to look up the nutritional information and what was there. And then it was scary. I mean, these drinks have something like, 30 grams of 40 grams of sugar. You're supposed to have 9 grams a day. And this drink has 4 tons.
Yes.
The healthiest smoothie was McDonald's, and the worst one was the yogurt drink in our cafeteria. So you've been forewarned. But it was really interesting to see kind of technology being used, the kids working in groups, on the web, kind of really taking advantage, and we always focus on the negatives of kind of how kids are benefiting from technology. But I had gone kind of with my hat on as the rep from the board on the wellness committee, and it was interesting to watch. I also today was at Rhoden Middle School, where they have been trying to benefit from a federal grant on something called Safe Routes to School, which encourages school kids to walk or bike to school. That same grant was used on Strawberry Hill and trying to get kids to, at Nathan Hale, Noroc, and Noroc High to walk. And they're now doing this at Rhoden, which is a really dangerous intersection. And the city kind of has been dragging its feet. But anyway, they're finally making progress, and hopefully this whole new parking lot and crossings and signage is all going to be installed over the course of next summer. And last of all, there are some kind of hardworking parents at Rowayton School that really want to change the dining experience, and they reached out. They contacted me originally, and I told them, that you really need to talk to the superintendent. And the superintendent was super responsive with Tom. They've been there to visit, and they're going to raise some money. We're going to give them a little money, and they really want to overhaul. And they've already changed the whole schedule, changed the whole. It's not as loud, not as crazy. It's by individual grade now that they have lunch. It's a shorter period, but it's a calmer period. Now they want to do some infrastructure improvements. And so they had Bill Hodel there, kind of figuring out how they're going to do all this. And anyway, so there are all sorts of little moving pieces going on in our school system. We don't always know about all of them, but parents can really have an input and can change things. And this is a perfect example of parents working with the superintendent to improve the educational experience.
Artie, anything?
Last Saturday was the Norwalk Elementary School Fun Run. That started, it's like 20-something year.
Yeah.
Joe Mataferri does it every single year. They had several hundred kids and parents come out. They run from Vets Park, where the rink is now, all the way around Vets Park and over to the Maritime Center. And every kid that participates gets a free pass for the day for the Maritime Center.
Cool.
So it was really nice, well attended, beautiful day.
I remember doing that with my kids when I could still run that far.
Yeah.
Eric, anything? No?
Not tonight.
Shirley?
Yeah, I attended, Val and myself, we attended the CAVE Convention, a 2-day workshop. It's at Connecticut Board of Education. And Ralph was there, Frank was there, and I was, able to participate in the workshops, and they were great workshops, and we're at mingle, and we did get a lot of information. Eval was, I guess, emailing it to the board so that they can have some of the stuff that we received. We had a couple of good speakers that was there, and then I went to the Connecticut State Conference and the NWCP Education Summit. And their focus, and at that summit, the Education Summit, Michael was there, Frank was there, and Cherise was there. And they focus on minority hiring, minority teaching, recruitment, and retention. That is the main focus that the state is now going to be focusing on, trying to make sure that we get more minorities. And they mingle with, I guess, put it with the HBCUs, the Historic Black Colleges and University. And one speaker, Dr. Gwendolyn Boyd, president of the Alabama State University. She was one of the speakers. She was really good. And the other speaker was Dr. Rudy Crew. He's president of Mecca Everett College now, so he was there. He was a great speaker. And I got to see Dr. Rivera. He's doing good, so it was good seeing him. Gave me a big hug. That was good seeing him. And he's doing good. Family's doing good and everything. Side note. And then the Lego League event that was at the Greenwich Academy. I know that a few people were mentioning that. A few of our schools participated in that event, and I know that we might end up doing a spotlight on it. I'm not sure, but just wanted to at least throw that out there as well. Sherelle brought it up too in one of her emails. So, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could, I just wanted to point out that the NAACP conference, because of its emphasis on minority recruiting, the State Department asked all alliance districts to make a contribution to that. We contributed $5,000 from our alliance grant. Other districts, depending on their size, did more or less. But we were very pleased to participate in that. And this really is a group effort of the alliance districts to improve minority recruiting.
And retention.
All right. Good, very good reports. All right, one little bit more business to do here. Approval of minutes. first set of minutes is October 18, 2016. Let's see, Chair would entertain a motion to approve the minutes. We can make changes to them after the motion. Motion is made and seconded by Heidi. All right, any changes, corrections? None? Okay. All right, we'll proceed to a vote. All in favor of approving the minutes, please indicate. Hands up again, I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Opposed? Abstentions? I wasn't here, so. I wasn't here either. Okay.
I couldn't access mine for some reason.
Okay. So they are approved 5 to, I counted 5 and 3 hands. Did I miss somebody?
You got
Were
me,
you,
right? I was here.
Did you vote in favor?
I voted in favor.
Okay, so 6-0-3 approved. Okay. All right, next set is the November 1, 2016 minutes. Is there a motion to approve? So moved by Artie, second. Heidi, any changes to the November 1 minutes? Okay, hearing none, we'll proceed to, oh, wait a minute. I had a correction. On page 4, there's a comment from John Mosby, and it says that he was filing a claim with the Ethnic Board. He actually said ethics. Okay, so we'll make that correction. All right, as corrected, all in favor of approving the minutes, please indicate. And that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 opposed. Abstentions? 2 abstentions. 7-0-2 approved. And the last set of minutes, November 15, 2016. Is there a motion to approve? So moved, seconded by Artie and Eric. Any changes, corrections? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All in favor of approving the minutes, please indicate. And that's all except Eric. All opposed? Abstentions? Abstention, okay, even though you were here.
I couldn't pull up for whatever reason, it wasn't pulling up on my phone when I was going over it earlier.
Oh, so you didn't have a chance to review it?
I didn't have a chance to review, so I didn't want to approve anything that I didn't have a chance to fully go over. So.
Understood. All right, so that's 8-0-1 approved. Okay, Chair would now entertain a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of employment of identifiable personnel and contract negotiations. Moved by Eric, seconded by Artie. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please indicate. And we are in executive session. We will take our traditional 5-minute recess.
Mike?
Yes.
Did you want to talk about
yeah.
the early years?
So you turned